Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Israeli American podcast hosted by ICANN, the Israeli American Civic Action Network. Today, my co-host is John Mirisch, ICANN's Chief Policy Officer and Council Member from Beverly Hills. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
And our special guest today is Aaron Bandler, the national correspondent now for JNS, the Jewish news service. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you for having me on, Dillon.
And today we are going to jump into a topic that those of us who are obsessed with Israel advocacy and messaging and Israel's PR may know about the issue of Wikipedia bias or bias within the Wikipedia website. Aaron Bandler has been the leading reporter on this issue, actually. And we're so lucky to have you here with us today, Aaron. For those who may not be familiar with Wikipedia bias, especially since October 7th, can you give us kind of a quick introduction to this issue?
Sure. First, I have to put in the disclaimer that my views expressed here don't represent that of my employer. So now with that out of the way, so Wikipedia, this has been an issue that I've been has been on my radar since 2018. It took several years to sort of like get go through all the research. Wikipedia is a very vast and complicated space, and so it took some time to kind of figure out really delve into it, figure out how to go about it, and then we finally published some articles of the Jewish Journal, had another piece published in Real Clear Investigations, and I'm continuing the beat at JNS. So first, it's important to understand how Wikipedia works. Wikipedia operates through a model called consensus. What that means is that if someone makes a change to an article on Wikipedia and no one disputes the change, then it's presumed to have consensus. But if someone does dispute the change, then Wikipedia editors are supposed to work out the differences on what's known as the talk page of an article. Every Wikipedia page has a talk page. If you're reading an article on Wikipedia, there's a tab that says talk. It's to the right of the article that you're reading. Anyone can look at a talk page. And then you can see the battles that have taken place on that particular article over the years. They're very fascinating, but it can be a bit confusing at first because Wikipedia editors speak in a lot of Wikipedia legalese, and they throw around these alphabet soup of abbreviations. And if you don't know what it all means, then it can be a little overwhelming at first. But I do know what it all means. So one of the things I need to do in my work is try and decode it all for the reader. And so the idea of these talk page battles is these Wikipedia editors are supposed to sort of come to reach a compromise of sorts. But this is the internet, and when it comes to controversial issues, especially, these compromises, or everyone sings "Kumbaya," aren't they don't happen all that often. And so what happens is that a lot of times these things can delve into like a formal poll of sorts where editors put in their stated position, and they have to argue for their position under Wikipedia policy. And an uninvolved Wikipedian, known as a closer, will swoop in and render a verdict on the discussion based on the numbers, as well as how persuasive the arguments are. Now, numerically speaking, consensus is usually about 2/3 needed for there to be a change from the status quo text of an article. But of course, mileage may vary depending on how much the closer finds the arguments to be persuasive or not. And so what has happened is that last year, right after October 7th, we saw discussions that were as many as 3-1 in favor of the anti-Israel side. This year, after a bunch of anti-Israel editors got sanctioned, it hasn't been quite as lopsided, but the anti-Israel editors still have the majority. And so even though it's been a little bit calmer on Wikipedia this year, it's still, a lot of the damage has already been done, and it's still gotten worse. My most recent article at JNS about this was how there's a Wikipedia article called Gaza Genocide. And for a while, the article, even though it was called Gaza Genocide, it's still couched that the article text is like allegations of genocide, or it's genocide according to the UN, Amnesty International, etc., etc. Recently, the Wikipedia editors changed it to state a neutral voice now that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. And it's ever since that change happened, which was on September 21st, from the next day onward, on the main page of Wikipedia's website, which millions of people see every day, there's a box in the upper right-hand corner that says "In the News," and where it says "Ongoing," you see Gaza War, which is what that Wikipedia page is called. It used to be called the Israel-Hamas War. Now it's called the Gaza War. And in parentheses, you see timeline and then genocide. And that genocide link goes to the Gaza genocide page. And that's been there since September 22nd. And that is going to be there for as long as the war continues. And it's, with the recent peace plan, hopefully the war will be coming to an end soon. Thank God the hostages are home. We'll see what happens the next phase of the deal. But that should, I know that was, sorry, I know that's kind of like a long-winded answer, but that should give an idea as to how Wikipedia works and, what sort of happened over like the past year or so. And now, of course, the House Oversight Committee is investigating Wikipedia. So we will see what comes of that.
So I have a question. I mean, Wikipedia does this system because it's supposed to be somehow democratic, correct? But
yeah, I mean, they will say that it's not a vote, but it basically kind of is, but also kind of isn't, I mean, I think the way I would put it is that it's more like this, or they view it as this sort of organic, decentralized method.
Well, but it sounds like if you have a majority of people, you're able to slant an article by using loaded terms or
definitely
other facts. I mean, Daniel Moynihan once said, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own facts. And this seems like you've got groups with an agenda, with an anti-Israel or an anti-Jewish agenda, who are gaming the system. They know these alphabet soup of terms. They know exactly what to do. A system that was created to be objective has suddenly become the exact opposite. What can we do about that? I mean, you see that on all your posts, which I follow, which are amazing, and your detailed reporting. And then there's also, I think there's a site called Wikibias. I'm not sure who runs that.
That's a Twitter account. Yeah.
A Twitter account called, right. And I'm not sure who runs it. My response is always just hashtag Wiki sucks, because it does right now. But what, I mean, exposing it is the first thing to do. What else can we do to counteract this? Because Wikipedia is very often the go-to source for people, many of whom may not be educated, but it doesn't matter. It's out there.
So I do be a little bit careful with what I say here, because Wikipedia policies say that you can't be canvassing, for instance, where it's like you can't tell people, like if you tell people like, hey, let's go fix an article, that's against Wikipedia policy. You also can't go in with what's called like what's called a writing great wrongs mindset, which is the idea, like if you go in with Wikipedia with the idea of, I think this site is very biased and I am here to fix it. Well, that you can't do that either. What I can say is,
let me ask you, why not? If there's something that is so obviously incorrect, it's supposed to be an online encyclopedia, which is supposed to be factual. What's wrong with fixing it if you can determine and show that interested parties have changed it for whatever reasons, propaganda or bias or whatever? I mean, that's one thing. The other thing, which I know we've discussed before, is it's supposed to all be anonymous. Well,
yeah,
the whole point of journalism is not hiding behind anonymity. So that clearly isn't working. Is it possible to maybe get a change so that people have to stand up, or that they expose, or that some other group exposes who these people are? Because if you know who they are and you can follow their other online rantings or activities, you may be able to demonstrate that someone has a bias and should not be an editor.
Right. So, okay, so that's two separate questions. Let's break down the first one. So the right mindset to have as Wikipedia editor, it should be, because Wikipedia is supposed to be the sum of all human knowledge. So the right mindset is, what knowledge do I have to share that can make Wikipedia better? How can I make Wikipedia better? Basically, like how can I, make sure that Wikipedia is upholding to its principles of neutral point of view, and so forth. So if you have that mindset and you show that you can consistently have that mindset across different articles, different topic areas, that's what Wikipedia wants to see in an editor. So if you think that a particular page is slanted or biased, like what you say is, okay, like here are some sources that I think adhere to Wikipedia policy, and in order for balance sake, we need to include them. So the idea is that if you look at like the Zionism Wikipedia page, for instance, there's the sentence that says Zionists wanted as many Jews and as few Arabs as possible, which is a very slanted and biased line. Right now, there's a moratorium on that line until February of 2026. So that line is not being changed anytime soon. We can talk more about that if you want. But in my piece in Real Clear Investigations, I talk about how that line basically reflects the views of like Rashid Holiday, Elon Pape, who, like, as we know, are very anti-Israel. Like, they are academics with an agenda. And what I've heard from editors is that, look, Rashid Holiday and Elon Pape's views should be included, in this Wikipedia page, but it needs to be attributed as their views.
Right.
And there needs to be other balancing views out there. I mean, there are plenty of pro-Israel scholars out there who have differing views, on 1948 war, and the Zionist movement, prior to 48. And so, and so these are types of discussions that need to be had on Wikipedia if someone truly wants to make it better. It's about like, what sources can I bring to the table that I think would help improve this article? And if you do that, then you're in good shape. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that you also have to know the rest of Wikipedia's policies, too, because to even begin editing Israel-Palestine articles, you need to have been an editor for at least 30 days and have made at least 500 edits to even begin editing there. That takes a long time, and there's only like a handful of other topic areas that have that kind of standard. So you need to show that you can be a productive editor in non-controversial topic areas.
Do we know, for example, that Qatar is not paying people full-time to for example, to be editors, and they'll talk about chrysanthemums and other things, knowing the policies of Wikipedia just so that they can make changes on the Muslim Brotherhood and other interested topics?
Well, I mean, and that gets back to your other question about anonymity. And so what's interesting about this is that Wikipedia actually encourages its editors to be anonymous to the point where, like, they tell them to, like, make sure they don't leave a paper trail that could lead to their real life identities, because Wikipedia editors, they, especially when they first start editing Wikipedia, they, those sort of tell the biggest clues as to who they might be in real life, because they edit according to like their hobbies, and maybe have some edits regarding like where they live, where they grew up, and so forth. So Wikipedia tells its editors to not do that. They want to make them untraceable. And as you mentioned, John, Wikipedia is the world's go-to website for information. It's usually, if not always, the top Google search on Google for anything. And of course, AI relies on Wikipedia a lot for its information. And so we consider that these articles are being read by everyone, and you have people shrouded in anonymity who are basically setting the table for our societal discourse. It is kind of problematic that like these people are therefore anonymous and therefore can't be held accountable. Like I have a byline. I can be held accountable for everything that I write, and that's how it should be.
Yes.
I think the reason why Wikipedia editors want to remain anonymous is because they're afraid of like harassment and being doxxed and so forth. And those things do happen to Wikipedia editors, even those who remain anonymous, and it is a real issue, and I don't want to downplay that. So I think it's a discussion that Wikipedia editors need to have among themselves, and I think that as the House Oversight Committee investigates Wikipedia, more and more people, more and more attention is drawn to this issue. These are all things as a society we need to talk about because of how influential Wikipedia is to our societal discourse.
So, Aaron, can we take maybe a 40,000 foot view of Wikipedia and the entity itself, the Wikimedia Foundation, I think it's called. So first of all, I think those of us of a certain age who are no longer in college or school anymore, or university, we remember Wikipedia a certain way, and maybe we would go to it to refer to things in the past. How pervasive is and how, I guess, in use is Wikipedia today? And then in terms of its prevalence in for academic use or even just general information, as you said, it should be the sum of the world's information. And then on top of that, if you could describe a little bit about the governance and how, because you talk about policies and things.
Yeah.
What is that governance? Is it a nonprofit kind of situation? And then how does the policy making being made? So can you give us a little bit of a snapshot of what that all looks like?
Sure. So as far as its prevalence, you mentioned how like in school, everyone said you can't. It's the rule in school always is you cannot cite Wikipedia research papers. But studies have shown that students begin the research process for the coursework by looking at Wikipedia and look at the sources that Wikipedia uses, and they'll cite those sources in their papers. What happens?
That's important.
Wikipedia articles just provide a one-sided slate of sources. I mentioned, how like Elon Pape, Rashid Holiday are cited a lot, and pro-Israel academics are it's harder to cite pro-Israel academics. Like Benny Morris, of course, gets cited quite a bit on Wikipedia, as he should, because he's a world-renowned scholar. But like on the Zionism page, one of the things I mentioned in my Real Clear piece is that Gil Troy was rejected as like one of the best sources on Zionism. He's written, some great books, on Zionism, and the idea behind that was that it was argued that he's an American presidential historian, therefore he has a expertise in Zionism, but he's cited by a lot of, his book has been cited, by pro-Israel scholars and so forth, but they will cite like this one. I forget his I forget his name, but they will. Wikipedia editor said that there's one like anti-Israel economist. His book on Zionism can be used as the best source, and it is cited, in the lead section of the Wikipedia article. Even though that particular academic is an economist, and the logic was, he's cited by other, reliable sources, scholars, and so forth, and and that particular person, has compared the 9/11 hijackers, to American revolutionaries, and just real real sick stuff, so that's double standard that comes into place regarding the academic sources cited, but also if you look at that the media outlets that Wikipedia considers to be reliable.
Al Jazeera,
yep, Al Jazeera, but also Amnesty International,
right?
Beit Selam, Southern Poverty Law Center. Although you
don't they cite CARE, but they have an issue with groups like ADL or that sort of thing.
I mean, CARE isn't quite cited to the extent that like Amnesty International is, but yeah, I mean the ADL is considered generally unreliable for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and so forth. But also you look at like. You can cite The Nation, you can cite Mother Jones, you can cite MSNBC, Jacobin, like these far left, Marxist sites, but you can't cite the Daily Wire, New York Post, Fox News, a lot of right-leaning sites that are more favorable to Israel, the mainstream media is, you can't really cite them. And so that alone creates a bias, a slant in terms of Wikipedia's coverage. And so Wikipedia editors, all they can do is summarize what reliable sources say. But when Wikipedia, when you can only cite, a one-sided set of sources, and that alone creates bias. And those are the sources that students are going to see and what they're going to cite when they look at Wikipedia for their research papers. And that's a serious problem.
Has Wikipedia changed when it comes to some of the woke right people, the Tucker Carlsons and Candace Owens? Have they now started to allow them to be cited because of their anti-Israel biases?
No, I don't think so. I think when it comes to like Tucker and Candace Owens, they were never considered reliable to begin with on Wikipedia, and I think, generally speaking, when it comes to like talking heads, or podcasters, those generally aren't cited a whole lot unless they're considered to be experts in the relevant field. So Tucker and Candace, I don't think those two have ever been cited much at all, and I don't think that's really changed. When it comes to like some of these, like extremists on the right, who have become very anti-Israel, I think those figures have always they've never been cited on Wikipedia, and their pages have always been very negative toward them, and of course as they should be, because the facts don't paint a very particularly good picture about Tucker, Candace these days. So
Can you talk? So, sorry, I mentioned before about the governance. Can you talk a little bit about like what Wikimedia Foundation is?
Yes. So the Wikimedia Foundation is it's not power that oversees Wikipedia. Its main function is that it's supposed to keep Wikipedia operational. It's done a little bit more than that these days. I mean, they have allocated millions of dollars for like DEI initiatives, and they've partnered with like the World Health Organization to try and combat COVID misinformation, and so forth. Like back when the George Floyd BLM riots were a thing, they issued a statement that didn't outright endorse BLM, but it was it was very BLM adjacent. So it's become a lot more political, like over the years, and very vocal when it comes to like woke, like left-wing activist stuff. Generally speaking, the Wikipedia's governance is not through the foundation; it's through its own internal mechanisms, and so how it works is that when it comes to like these more controversial topic areas, it's underneath an umbrella called discretionary sanctions. What that means is that administrators who are considered uninvolved in particular topic areas, they can swoop in anytime and just sanction editors. And usually that doesn't happen unless it's like something very egregious is going on. So what happens is that they have these different like venues where one editor reports another, and then admins sort of like hear like their cases, and other editors can kind of weigh in. It's almost, I think an analogy I heard was it's almost like a gladiator fight, because you're seeing like these editors being hung out to dry, in this public space, and other editors can just weigh in and be like, that this person deserves to be sanctioned, or no, this is unfair. And then the admins sort of deliberate amongst themselves, and all it takes is one admin to take action, but usually they'll try and sort of decide amongst themselves, like, okay, like, do we all agree that there should be a sanction here or not? And then what can happen is that if what's known as just on Wikipedia, you'll see this word thrown around called disruption or disruptive, and that's kind of a catch-all term for anything that violates Wikipedia policy or its consensus process.
Sure.
And so if there's just too much disruption across a particular topic area, what happens is that it gets kicked up to the arbitration committee, or ARBCOM. That's Wikipedia's Supreme Court, and they'll hear cases, across the entire topic area. And a lot of editors kind of get pulled into it, and a bunch of editors will like compile evidence against each other. And the arbitrators will sort of deliberate amongst themselves and will vote on whether or not editors should be sanctioned, or if certain topic areas need to be more tightly regulated, and so forth. And sometimes ARBCOM will will deliberate in secret if it involves private evidence. So like what John, you mentioned, like, if there's evidence, for instance, that there were editors who were being paid by Qatar, to make a bunch of Israel edits, that'd be the kind of thing that the people would send evidence to ARBCOM privately, and then they would decide amongst themselves that the evidence is there to warrant sanctioning certain editors. So that's sort of how the basic governing structure works at Wikipedia. The Wikimedia Foundation doesn't usually intervene. There was one instance where they blocked an admin back in 2019, and the Wikipedia, and it kind of happened out of nowhere, and without explanation. The Wikipedia community revolted because they don't like it when their source system, their governing system, is encroached upon. Eventually, the foundation relented. So generally speaking, you don't see that kind of intervention from the Wikimedia Foundation. Now, what's interesting right now is that there's elections happening for the foundation's board of trustees. One of the candidates is someone who is anti-Israel and has a bunch of anti-Israel social media posts. And after there was some media coverage about it, the foundation, they decided to run some background checks, and they actually kicked her off the ballot. And so because of that, now the Wikipedia community is revolting a bit because they see that as an encroachment on democracy. So now once again, the Wikimedia Foundation is sort of like, under scrutiny for this. So that's sort of like how, that's basically how its governance works.
Do any editors or contributors to Wikipedia get paid?
So that's a great question. Paid editing on Wikipedia is allowed only if you disclose it. So if you're being paid by like a corporation to make edits on their behalf, you have to disclose it, on your Wikipedia page. And if you don't, then you'll get banned. And that's the kind of thing that experienced editors are very good at sniffing out. So like if someone is hypothetically paid by, whatever corporation, and make a bunch of edits to that corporation's Wikipedia page that seem very promotional or portray the corporation in a positive light, editors are like, okay, this seems kind of suspicious, let's and then they'll report that editor to the arbitration committee or whoever else, and they'll get banned, yeah.
How would we know if Qatar, that's got all the money in the world, didn't have a group? They run Al Jazeera and say, hey, we've got money. We're gonna make this seem organic. We're gonna pay you. We're gonna do how? I mean, isn't there a way that they could get away with doing that without, since the editors are anonymous?
Yeah,
I think, and also I just want to go on top of that question and just say, like, who ultimately, there's got to be someone who holds a switch or switches or handles the finances, and like, how does the actual management? I mean, somebody's got to be in charge at the top somewhere. How does that work?
Yeah. So to regards to John's question, yeah, of course there could be like Qatar instances of Qatar paying editors, but how would we know? Because editors are anonymous.
Well, that's the whole point.
And therein kind of lies the problem with the editor anonymity and what I mentioned earlier. Regards to finances, that's all the Wikimedia Foundation. They have people there who handle the finances, where the money goes to, and so forth. And so when it comes to like the foundation, like funding, like left-wing social justice causes, there some editors are kind of like why is the foundation spending money on this? Like this doesn't help Wikipedia. The foundation will say things like, oh, we're funding like these groups that kind of help marginalized communities, and that gets them involved in the knowledge space, and that there's Wikipedia and so forth. But I think the point is that like there is a lot of distrust between Wikipedia editors and the Wikimedia Foundation.
Do we know their finances? Do they make money? Do they, what is their budget?
So they actually on their website they release documents of like an audit every year, and so yeah, I mean like they rake in like millions of dollars. Like they are, they're doing very well for themselves. So every time you see like that banner that says like, hey, like please donate. Like I mean they're awash
275 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's they are awash in cash. They're not hurting for money. And of course, like I said, it goes towards these DEI initiatives and like woke causes, like that, so like that's where your money is going, it's so people need to keep that in mind. Like when they're thinking about donating to Wikipedia, it's not just the article content, as bad as that is, it's what the foundation is also doing, and becoming more political, rather than just, keeping the lights on, for Wikipedia's website.
One of the questions I had was around, and you kind of touched on it for a second, about AI.
Yeah.
A lot of the knowledge bases that AI are tapping into, their different AI models, I think have Wikipedia content in it if they're not directly crawling Wikipedia live. What's your sense around that? And do you have any concern about AI relying on Wikipedia? And what would your advice be to AI companies in that regard?
So, I mean, so as I said, like AI relies a lot on Wikipedia for its answers. I don't know like the percentage breakdown, but it's a lot, And in one of my Jewish Journal articles, I mentioned how I think it's called Google Nest or something, where someone like asked it to find the Nakba, and it says, according to Wikipedia, Nakba is the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. Which I mean that I mean, that's obviously very problematic if people are getting that answer from Google Nest.
Yeah.
And so I think it shows how AI has become like a force multiplier of sorts of Wikipedia. And so it's interesting, and I think this is a problem. This is a more broader issue, is that so there are some people who say that AI is going to kill Wikipedia because people are using AI now for their information, and even if AI is getting its information from Wikipedia, people aren't going to Wikipedia's website. But also like that can also apply to like different news sites too, that AI is using for its answers.
A lot of them are biased themselves.
And of course they are, right. I mean, it's all sort of like one big like closed feedback loop of sorts. But but if AI is taking away page views from from news sites, Wikipedia, etc., that rely on page views to survive, then it's sort of like, well, how does AI stop it? AI is almost like killing itself in a way, you know. And so it raises an interesting question about like how, you know, how this question is dealt with moving forward. But I think it's a very important one that needs to be answered like sooner rather than later. And so I don't know if there's going to be a scenario where different news sites are going to give AI companies paid licenses to use their content. With Wikipedia, because it's nonprofit, I don't know how that would even work. So it's a very interesting question to think about. For AI companies, you know, what I would just say is, you know, you have to, I mean, keep in mind that like if you rely on Wikipedia for you know, for your AI platform's answer, is that you're going to get a bunch of one-sided propaganda as part of it. And so, but of course, all these AI companies, you know, like maybe they themselves are, you know, are woke, it seems, you know, and that's what they want. Yeah. So, I mean, definitely the world's going to look a lot different in the next 5 years thanks to AI, and so there's gonna and Wikipedia is certainly part of that, I think.
Maybe there could be an AI that says we don't use Wikipedia because it's biased, and we're you know, that they would gain credibility by being balanced and fair and not using some of these biased sources. But that could include mainstream media too. But I can imagine that a unbiased AI program could gain credibility rapidly. And I guess that leads to my question, which is, one, what alternatives are there to Wikipedia? And two, what can we do outside of the editing internal inside baseball process to pressure Wikipedia to become less biased?
So, so one alternative to Wikipedia that's out there is called Justipedia. That's run by Betty Wills. You know, she herself has been a Wikipedia editor for a long time. And so, and if you look at like Justipedia's coverage on like the Zionism article, like it's like night and day compared to the Wikipedia page. You know, like it's so much more balanced. And I mean, there have been a lot of Wikipedia alternatives over the years that, like Larry Sanger, who's the co-founder of Wikipedia, he's been very critical of what his site has become. You know, he has different alternatives over the years, and they've kind of, they've all kind of failed. And it's hard for a suitable alternative to really emerge to Wikipedia because of how Google makes it so prominent in its searches. And until that changes, then really nothing will change in regards to Wikipedia. So I think there needs to be pressure on Google, you know, in regards to this. And I think the more people that sort of bring Wikipedia's bias to the forefront, because I think a lot of people use Wikipedia because it's convenient and they don't really think much about, you know, whether or not it's biased or even if the information is even reliable. They just go, oh, okay, you know, like I want to look up who won the World Series 30 years ago. Okay, was these two teams play? This is who won. Cool. You know, it's convenient. It's convenient for people. That's why they use it. We all use Wikipedia, you know, at some point during our daily lives. And so I think it's really just more about like raising awareness and make people aware of what goes on, you know, behind the scenes on Wikipedia. And I think the more people, you know, would learn about what goes on behind the scenes, the more they would sort of get soured by Wikipedia, you know.
Well, and let me just say, that's why your exposés are so important, and hopefully you will continue and you will bring in other people as well. It's just, we need to make sure that the word gets out, and your writings need to be widely disseminated on social media and elsewhere, because you are exposing something that is that outs Wikipedia, and which Google needs to see and the decision makers need to see, because you're exposing it.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the kind words. And yeah, I think that the more people that cover Wikipedia, the more that bring attention to it. And you know, I think that's ultimately how things could end up changing. You know, it's all about word of mouth. You know, and getting the word out there. And we'll see what the House Oversight Committee, you know, we'll see what happens there, what they come up with. I know they asked for like editors' IP addresses and so forth. So if they, you know, could uncover, you know, like a ring of editors who are being paid by Qatar or whomever, you know, that would be a game changer.
Is there anything we can do with our lobbyists in DC, for example, to help with that process, to help expose even further Wikipedia and to put pressure on them to, well, if they're going to be a biased source, shouldn't they at least lose their tax exempt status, for example?
Yeah, it also goes back to the Section 230 issue of the Communication Decency Act, because right now the Wikimedia Foundation is not liable for any sort of like defamation claims, in regards to Wikipedia articles, because they're considered, because they say, oh, like we don't handle the content there, it's all the editors. You can sue individual editors, but they're anonymous. So how can you, And so I think that the Section 230 debate should also be a prominent point of discussion when it comes to Wikipedia and what members of Congress can do, because the Wikimedia Foundation is, if people could hold Wikimedia Foundation liable, for defamatory content on their Wikipedia pages, then that would be a game changer.
So it's establishing accountability, and as you say, since the editors of Wikipedia are anonymous, there is no way to be able to sue them. I mean,
That's
you're
right.
suing a John Doe; it has absolutely no meaning or consequence.
Correct.
Are you able to share a little bit more about what the House is looking into? Have they requested documents, or do you anticipate a hearing?
I don't have any inside information. I can only go by what's been publicly reported. They sent a letter to the Wikimedia Foundation and requested. I think the letter was sent in August, and their deadline was September 10th, which was a month ago. I don't know. I don't know if they've even gotten an answer. Yeah, that's probably something I should follow up on. Maybe that could be my next story. So I don't know. Honestly, I really don't know what's going to happen here. It would be amazing for there to be a hearing, but that's up to the committee. So we'll see.
Can I ask you, aside from yourself, who are some of the other leading journalists or people who are looking into this, whose work we should try to follow, because this is a team effort?
So Ashley Rensburg, who's done some work at Pirate Wires, and he now has his own. I don't know if it's a Substack or his own website called NPOV Media, but that's dedicated to Wikipedia investigations. Shlomit Lear, she's not a journalist, but she is like a researcher at the University of Haifa, and she's, she had the World Jewish Congress report that came out last year about Wikipedia's bias. She herself is also an editor, so she's done some important work on this. Matilda Heller over at the Jerusalem Post has done some good work, as well as Ohad Merlin. He's I think a freelancer with the Post, and he's also done some work on like Wikipedia's Arabic language. And so just people understand, like Wikipedia has like more than 300 different language versions, and they're all very different. What's on the English version of Wikipedia, which is what I focus on primarily, is different from what's on the French Wikipedia or the Arabic Wikipedia. And if you think the English version of Wikipedia is bad, the Arabic one is like 1,000 times worse. Just like flat out like anti-Semitic propaganda on there. They've had like a big Palestine flag on their homepage. I think like since October 7th happened. Maybe it's been taken down at this point. I don't know, but I know like it's been there. So Ohad Merlin has done some good work about the Wikipedia's Arabic site. I think those are the main ones. I'm sure there are others. I'm blanking.
Good. Well, thank you.
So we're just almost at the top of the hour, and we'll wrap up here. I have a couple more questions. First, I'll just ask them both at the same time. First, if Wikipedia were a government, what form of government would you describe it as? And then in terms of advice for parents or students, and also for activists, in terms or advocates, in terms of how to encourage parents maybe to steer their students away from that as a resource, and maybe to use some other resources. Have you given some thought around what you would advise the community, how the community should treat Wikipedia?
So that's a great question in terms of how I would describe a system of governance. I would say that it's kind of majoritarianism. Majoritarianism, and it's also very like the whole idea of Wikipedia is that like there's actually an essay, and when I talk about Wikipedia essays, like anyone can write an essay in Wikipedia, but some essays are considered to be more authoritative than others. It just kind of depends on how editors like view them. They're not official policy, but sometimes they can be treated as such. And so there's one essay that talks about how like if you try and you know, if you say that certain things are unjust, cares, you know, it's all about like stability and what's best for the community, you know, and so that's how it's. So when you think about, you know, like some of these like Marxist societies where they say that it's all about like, you know, the needs of society, you know, over the needs of the individual. That's kind of how Wikipedia is to a degree. It's all about like what is best for the community, you know, what keeps things stable for the Wikipedia community. So it's sort of like this egalitarian majoritarianism type of a system of government. It's how I would put it.
Interesting.
And as far as like how I would advise like parents, advocates, I would just say like don't I would say like don't go to Wikipedia for starters, you know. But if you're going to use Wikipedia, you know, like really like you have to look at it very critically. Like, you can't just accept that that what's on there is factual, because especially when it comes to like controversial stuff, because you're more likely you're being fed propaganda. You want to check the sources to each line, you know, and check to make sure that the text actually matches the sources for one, and see if the sources are all objective sources or you're getting a bunch of one-sided sources. And but of course most people don't have the time to do that. So
yeah. Has there been any conversation around, and this will be my last question, I promise, any conversation around the way that Wikipedia is being used in public schools? So for example, here at ICANN, we've really exposed how UTLA and some of the more activist teachers are weaponizing their position in the classroom and their authority in the classroom to kind of push propaganda onto their students. I would imagine that Wikipedia would be an amazing tool in that fight because it has a perceived authority to it. What's your sense of that?
Right. Well, I think that kind of gets back to the two I said earlier about how, you know, how in school you can't cite Wikipedia research papers, but students will start their research process there anyway. Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know if there's a way for teachers to sort of like, you know, say like, don't even use the sources on Wikipedia and kind of have an awareness as to like what are some sources that Wikipedia uses. It's to look out for that with like research papers. But also like there have been reports of textbooks that have been found to plagiarize Wikipedia. I know David Collier, you know, who's a great journalist, you know, based in the UK. He exposed a while back how one textbook was found to have plagiarized Wikipedia on the Israel-Palestine conflict, but even for non-controversial stuff, I recall reading a report about how like a chemistry textbook was found to have plagiarized Wikipedia, and so forth. So it kind of gets. I think there might be more to that. You know, I'd be curious to see like how much these textbooks really actually mirror, you know, Wikipedia. Even if it's not plagiarism, like if they're just, you know, if they're reflecting, you know, what Wikipedia says, if using the same kind of sources, you know, I think that would be a big deal too. So I think there needs to be more work done in terms of like, you know, where these textbooks are getting their information from.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, based on some of the things that John and I have seen teachers do in the classrooms, especially here in California, Massachusetts, I wouldn't be surprised if they are encouraging students to go to Wikipedia as a source,
right? Yeah.
Based on that extreme kind of bias that we're seeing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. And I think just to show how prevalent this Wikipedia is, I keep going back to the Zionism line, because I mean, something that's gotten a lot of media attention, but also it's just it really embodies how bad Wikipedia has become. Because to say a neutral voice that Zionists wanted as many Jews and as few Arabs as possible, like it's just flat out propaganda that you'd expect to see on like Electronic Intifada. But like there it is, right there, the opening paragraph on Wikipedia. It's wild. But I remember last year there was this controversy surrounding a city councilman in the San Francisco Bay Area, not San Francisco itself, but in one of like the South Bay communities, and he made some anti-Israel comments. And when he was called out on them for city council, he's like, "Oh no, why so it's factual? Look what the Wikipedia page says. Zionists want as many Arabs, want as many Jews and as few Arabs as possible." And so like what. I can't emphasize this enough. Like what happens with Wikipedia does not stay there. It eventually metastasizes throughout society, and so that's why more people need to be aware of this issue and be following it.
Aaron, I can think of, for me at least, 3 adjectives to describe Wikipedia, and tell me if you disagree with any of them. One would be Kafkaesque, the other would be Orwellian, and the third would be Huxleyan, as in
Huxley, Brave New World, definitely.
And I will end my. I really appreciate your being here, and I will repeat what I tend to write on your columns, which are so comprehensive. There's not a lot to add, and it's amazing. And please keep it up and keep it in social media. But I will end by saying, Wiki sucks.
Well, John, I think you hit the nail on the head there with your three adjectives. Definitely Kafkaesque, Orwellian, and Huxleyan. Or what was the last one? Huxley-esque?
Huxley. I think you could say Huxley-esque or Huxleyan. Yeah, like Aldous Huxley. So.
Exactly, Huxleyan kind of rolls off the tongue better, I think.
Yeah, Huxleyan, I like it. Well, all three of them work, and I think they're accurate. But Aaron, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. And again, keep up the great work. And we hope to have you on a regular basis. You're a phenomenal reporter in our community, and we always read your work. So thank you for your service in that regard.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I love to talking about this issue. As I told you before the show, this is my favorite subject to cover and report on. I'm very passionate about this subject. I always wanted to say that, like, Wikipedia, I think, why it's so fascinating to me, it's not just its impact on society, but it's really a world unto itself. And Wikipedia, when I talk to editors, they tell me that, Wikipedia is kind of a hard habit to break, and even just like, even though I don't edit Wikipedia, reporting and covering it, it's also kind of a hard habit to break. Wikipedia, like, once you start to like get Wikipedia, it really sucks you in. And I think a lot of editors like truly have fallen in love with Wikipedia, and to an extent, I have too. Which is what makes it so sad that it's become like a propaganda tool. And so I think, and so I hope to share, like with you, with your audience, and with anyone who reads my work, is that I want to also have other people share, this love I developed for Wikipedia, and that should just make people all the more motivated to, talk about the issue of its bias, because it really is like a remarkable and novel concept, but it's been co-opted by bad actors, and we need to expose that. And when we talk about like the culture wars and so forth, like Wikipedia is such a huge part of that, and for so long it's gone under the radar, and now, like in the past year, it's finally getting attention. So let's capitalize on the attention. Let's use this opportunity to bring it to the forefront, and we'll see what the House Oversight Committee comes up with ultimately.
In a sense, Wikipedia is kind of like the idea of the hive mind, correct?
It is, yes. That's fitting it, yeah.
It's the hive mind, though, that has become, for those of you who know Star Trek, like the Borg in Star Trek. And your work is amazing, and hopefully that will allow it to go back to what it was intended to be. It's very difficult to imagine something that is anonymous like that not being co-opted, because there's no accountability in that sense. So that really is maybe one of the core questions, is how do you establish accountability in something that at its very core almost demands anonymity? And maybe we can continue to discuss these questions and find answers.
Definitely. I am all for that. I mean, these are very important answers that we as a society need to answer moving forward.
Perfect. Well, John, we will leave it there, and Aaron as well. Resistance is not futile when we've got Aaron leading the way with this research and investigative reporting. So thank you, Aaron. For those of you who know Star Trek, that was a Star Trek reference. We will see you next week on another episode of the Israeli American podcast hosted by ICANN, the Israeli American Civic Action Network. Thank you so much.